All right, guys, welcome to the I Love CVille Show. My name is Jerry Miller. Thank you for joining us. We are live in Charlottesville, across the Commonwealth, the country, and the world on the I Love CVille Network. Thank you for being patient with us. A little late start for today's program. We see all media covering Charlottesville and Central Virginia watching today's program. Yaz Washington, minutes away, Charlottesville City Council candidate. Yaz Washington, I think, has a strong chance now of being one of two candidates to get elected to Charlottesville City Council. We'll explain why. We'll ask her how her campaign is doing. She participated in a forum yesterday with Brian Pinkston and Juan Diego Wade. We'll get her take on how the forum went. I'll get her thoughts on Chief Brackney's firing and Mayor Walker's withdrawal, surprising withdrawal, abrupt withdrawal from the 2021 Charlottesville City Council race. First, I'm going to offer some perspective myself. This is, perspective from the heart that I've given some thought and I've digested. Mayor Walker's withdrawal surprised me. I've said many times on this show, I thought she was a front runner to win a spot on the dais. Underestimating the value proposition of an incumbent and an incumbent's time on council should never be done. You never underestimate the val prop of being the incumbent with that name recognition. Yesterday, she shocked Central Virginia, and if you pick up Commonwealth-wide media, you realize the story made statewide ripples in newspapers and television broadcasts and morning talk shows alike. I think Mayor Walker genuinely is very burned out and very tired and very exhausted. She's frustrated with the combative nature of council meetings. Carol Thorpe sent this information to me earlier today. If you notice, she's raised $0 for her campaign. I do not believe her campaign website is even live, nor has it been live at all throughout 2021. So if you consider that $0 were raised for the campaign up until the point yesterday when she announced her resignation, if you consider that her website, a critical component to fundraising, a website for a candidate, was not ever live in the 2021 calendar year, if you consider that earlier this year when she made the announcement that she wanted to run for council, she literally said in her announcement speech that I'm not sure I even want to do this. All these factors, I think, genuinely show that she was torn on the issue of running for re-election. I think we will not know her impact on Charlottesville until down the road. It's tough to gauge any candidate's impact on the city they're serving until we have the benefit of hindsight. That's fair. I think a candidate like Mayor Walker, who has had a lot of supporters, thousands of supporters, the first independent elected to council in a very long time, first black woman as mayor ever, I think we won't know her impact until months, if not years from now. How she's inspired the next generation of people, perhaps how she may have inspired Yaz, which I will ask Yaz about on today's show. How she has potentially bridged equity, equality, and social justice gaps. We won't know these answers until months, years down the road from now. What we can say is her term has had a lot of highs and a lot of lows. We have statues that are no longer around the city of Charlottesville, monuments of Confederate generals gone. A lot of that can be attributed to her. We also have made national news, global news, over sexually graphic poetry that she published on her Facebook page. That can be attributed to her. It's been, for lack of better phrase, a roller coaster ride, her term and tenure on the dais. Regardless of personal opinion, and you know on this show I have been critical of some of her policy-making decisions, when she chooses a perfect outlook from a developer, perfection becomes the enemy of production. And from my standpoint, any new housing in the city of Charlottesville is coveted, needed, and wanted. So pursuing a perfect developer scenario for housing just is not a reality, and many developers choose to just go buy right with their decision making, their money, and in the creation of new inventory in the city. You know, for every minute of frustration that I felt to the mayor, I felt similar minutes of, wow, this person is courageous, has unbelievably thick skin. She gets more heat from citizens, taxpayers, and constituents than all 4 counselors combined. First college graduate in her family, the first black female mayor in Charlottesville history. The history books on this tenure and this term will not be written tomorrow. They will not be written next month. They will not be written in 2022. But when they are published, I can assure you, generations to come will know the name Mayor Nikia Walker. We must recognize her courage, her fortitude, and her commitment to her personal moral compass. We don't have to agree with it, but we must recognize it. I wanted to get some of those thoughts off my chest, out of my brain and into my mouth so you, the viewers and listeners, could hear. Now, Judah Wickhauer is our director. If we could go to the studio camera and let's welcome Yaz Washington to the program. Yaz, when we set up this interview, neither you nor I anticipated this resignation. I will ask you about this. I will ask you about Chief Brackney. Prior to asking these questions, you were in a forum yesterday with Pinkston, Bryan, Wade, Juan Diego. I want to know how the forum went, and if you could offer some perspective on how your campaign is going with less than 2 months from the polls being open and people casting votes for 3 people for 2 spots.
Yeah, most definitely. So, there was a forum yesterday hosted by the senior statesman, which was pretty great. The question of the firing of Chief Brackney came up. Also, as well, thoughts about what to do with the Kmart location, definitely housing, that's a big one right now, and also the charter school, which was a little different, and thoughts about creating more spaces for students with IEDs or who just have difficulty working in a typical classroom setting.
How's the campaign going?
The campaign is going pretty great. So it's T-minus 53 days.
53 days.
Yes, and I'm really excited. It's great. It's going to be about, we probably have about 3 more forums or debates in the upcoming months. And as of right now, that's on my calendar, so I'm really excited. It's really great anytime that you can sit as I guess sort of like a panel and, have different thoughts and all of that and kind of see everybody's vision lay out. So, yeah.
This race yesterday afternoon, the complexion of the race changed dramatically. We had 4 candidates for 2 spots. One of those 4 candidates was an incumbent who was mayor and had the biggest name recognition of any of the candidates in the race. She surprised all of us, including me, by withdrawing from the race. Shocked me. Open-ended question for you. When you heard the news, what immediately went through your mind?
Yeah, so with Mayor Nikia Walker, kind of like backing out and, being and announcing that she won't be running for re-election, I think she served 4 years. And I think, with everything about Charlottesville kind of is looking at a different direction and being able to change the climate and the culture, I think that that's a really big one. I think also taking a step back from, race, I think that we've definitely done a lot to be able to encourage social justice. And I think there's a lot of programs in place, but I definitely think that moving forward, being able to step out of that is how we really bring Charlottesville back together in a way where we don't constantly feel like we're butting heads with one another. So I definitely think that she's, the statues are down. That was moving forward off of state legislation. And I think that that's, really great. It definitely brought up a lot of deeply rooted emotions for individuals. So I think that with that being said, doing that, and then she's also done her part with food equity. But aside from that, as we work to re-image Charlottesville, there's definitely a need to make sure that these 2 seats are filled, and they're filled with someone who has a plan that works for all residents, once again, and not centralizing focus on one marginalized group, because that can be very overwhelming as well, as the rest of the city oftentimes feels neglected.
Were you shocked? Were you surprised? What was the raw emotion that you experienced when you read that?
Well, honestly, we're both independents, so I was actually neither here nor there.
You expected it?
I didn't exactly. Honestly, I didn't really put too much thought to it. Just with her having announced so late. Mostly my thoughts are of Juan Wade and Brian Pinkston.
So you didn't think, and I'm a straight shooter here, you didn't think she had a shot to win one of the 2 spots because of the late announcement, Mayor Walker?
It definitely seemed like she was kicking up, and it seemed like she did have some people that were still, following, alongside with her image and what she's looking to be able to accomplish in the city. But I think that moving forward, I think that between the 3 of us, there's only 2 seats, but I think that we all have plans for Charlottesville, and I think that they're all ones that are effective. I think that mine is the best, obviously.
You should say that.
I'm big-headed, or I definitely wouldn't have ran, and I definitely think that being able to get back to that is definitely how we're able to just overcome a lot of the racial tension that's kind of been like bubbling over the past couple of months.
Have you considered, and I'm sure you have, the political science and strategy now with Nikia Walker out of the race? If you are able to capture her base of voters and inspire her base of voters, and you combine that base with the base that you have grown and inspired, you legitimately have a very good shot of winning this race. I would say, and this is me talking here, and frankly, I know I'm right, I would say the Nikia Walker resignation and withdrawal from this race impacts your campaign potentially more than Pinkston and Wade's combined. Juan Diego Wade, I've said it on the show, I think is a shoo-in to win one of the 2 spots. The second spot is very much up for grabs. If you're able to capture Walker's base and combine it with yours, you very much could go toe-to-toe with Pinkston on election night. Your thoughts on how the science and the strategy and how it could impact your campaign?
Yeah, so definitely, again, I guess going back to my vision for Greater Charlottesville, it's definitely to enhance the quality of living. I think that we are able to bring about systemic change by focusing more on social issues. And social issues, those go that goes beyond racial equity, but also, we have to consider homelessness. What do we do about that? Also to climate justice, higher education, economic security. And I think that once we start to, really get into those types of issues, we're able to build back better, and we're able to really provide, not only equity, but we're able to build the city up in a way that it deserves. And Charlottesville needs to be modernized. There's definitely things that are outdated. Whether that's the contingency learning plan, making sure that students are taking more rigorous courses, being able to provide them with technology, and definitely broadband as well. That's a really big one right now.
You are doing, and I respect what you're doing here.
Yeah.
You're doing a hell of a job of sidestepping my question. Okay, you are very strategic and savvy, and I understand what you're doing. You're doing a hell of a job of sidestepping my question here. I'm gonna try a different approach. How does Yaz Washington capture the Nakia Walker base to win a spot on council in early November?
Yeah, so I think honestly, I had said some months ago that I think that she oftentimes focuses on the Black community in Charlottesville. Very simply put, I would like to be able to still provide solutions for that, and I think that investments in urban agriculture, being able to provide food security, building Black Americans up to be more self-sufficient. Being able to make sure that they're financially literate, they have access to stable housing. Also, as well, when we're talking about redevelopment of CRHA and what that looks like, or more so to pan out government-sponsored dwellings, being able to see that as a capital project that shouldn't be neglected. So I think that that's the best way to go about that. And definitely in regards to education, Juan Wade is on the
school board. Yeah.
Also as well, I think that I think school boards kind of did that thing where they've kind of stalled, for a couple of years. But I think that we should definitely push for universal pre-K programs, and being able to cover the bureaucratic costs, but also lessening the burden on struggling families, and making sure that we're able to get those. So, 3 to 5, they can go on ahead and start their educational career, making sure that they're developmentally prepared and whatnot. So all of that is things that I would like to be able to do, but then also making sure that we're able to pop out and look at Charlottesville as a whole. We're a growing community. What does Charlottesville need? And not just one district, but all 8. So,
did you brainstorm with your campaign and advisory team the cause and effect of her resignation? And if so, what was that brainstorming process like? What was the conversation like? What were your trusted advisors relaying or parlaying to you in the political war room of Yaz Washington's campaign?
Yeah, so I think that the main reason, I'm not exactly sure, but I think that, mere exhaustion, and I think that a lot of elected officials currently, COVID was a very stressful period for people. It surfaced a lot of issues. So I think that with that being said, having to address crisis management, offering relief to, struggling families, and then, not having your typical percentage or, amount of individuals who need access to resources, but having that, triple. And so having to focus on all of that and being able to make sure that all partners are on deck probably could have been overwhelming as well.
How do you keep that from happening to you if you're elected? How does Juan do it? How does Brian do it? I mean, this is like this era, Yaz, of like, and you grew up in this era of ubiquitous social media, this era of constantly being on. I mean, hell, I go out, I'm not an elected official, I host a talk show. I go out places with my family, and we have folks coming to us at the table talking to us about the shows we have done. 90% positive commentary, 10% people coming up to us and saying, I didn't agree with what you said here. And this is at dinner with my wife and my kid and my in-laws or my family. They're coming to me at dinner and talking about this. So I can't even imagine the attention and the pressure of constantly being on that Mayor Nakia Walker has been feeling throughout her tenure. I mean, there is no more recognizable figure in this town except for what? Maybe Dave Matthews, maybe Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who lives in Orange County. There's no more recognizable figure in this town than Nakia Walker. And the pressure she must have felt to be on 24/7, 365, exhaustion is probably an understatement. How do we prevent that from impacting, say, you, should you be elected to the dais?
Yeah, so I've definitely thought about, COVID was definitely a wrench, I think, for a lot of people. We haven't seen a pandemic, since we've all been alive. So that was definitely a lot to take in. But I think that moving forward, we're in a period where relief has been offered, and I'm really, kind of happy to be able to come in and offer, plans for recovery, but also for reform as well. And as we wish to be able to change the culture of Charlottesville, I think that reform is a big one that we should cling on to, whether that's through, making sure that we have a well-run Charlottesville Police Department, whether that's, making sure that we're able to provide access to resources within schools, and also to moving forward on capital projects. What does that look like? And making sure that we have a plan, but that it's a realistic one, and that we're not, we don't have our backs up against a wall, and we're not introducing projects or programs that we can't properly fund. So I think that everyone in Charlottesville has been really comforted over this period, and I think that it's always important to make sure that all residents feel as though they have received they've received the most that the government can possibly give out. And I think that it's great to be able to aside from PUA or unemployment benefits and whatnot, I think that it's great for Charlottesville to continue to consider ways that they can help residents. I think that being able to look at what's done with LAJC and seeing that they not only have the right of counsel, but they also have funding as well. It's really great every time that a program's in place that can actually bring about change, and it's actually there to kind of be a system measure so that council doesn't feel like they're overextending themselves. And I think that by being able to make sure that there's things like that, it's not overwhelming the city manager. We would like to be able to make sure that we have one that's here for the long haul. And, when you're talking about the termination of Chief Brackney.
I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, Charlottesville definitely, there's an open search currently, making sure that we have a police chief that can definitely be the face of change. And I think that that's absolutely amazing, to be able to make sure that they're providing solutions, and whether that results in not necessarily the termination of a chief, but also to looking in within the department as well, which it's really great to have things like IA there.
I'm going to ask you a tough question.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a really straightforward and pointed question. City Hall, in less than a week, we've seen the firing of Chief Brackney, a black woman, and we've seen the resignation of Nakia Walker, a black woman. do you feel any of these moves? We can also include Dr. Richardson, former city manager, parting ways. We can include Chief Thomas, the police chief before Chief Brackney, two African American men. Do you think any of this attrition is race related?
Honestly speaking, I'm not particularly sure, but I think that quite a bit's taken place over the course of this election, and it's definitely been a lot for me to sit and analyze. But honestly speaking, there was that thing that we were talking about, and it's a really core part of Charlottesville, which is the infrastructure. And I think that it's really important to make sure that we have elected officials who can uphold what the vision looks like for Charlottesville, and it's definitely one of reform. And I think that, making sure that we have a chief of police that is a part of that is really amazing. I know that, in regards to relationship building was one that I had seen in the news, and I think that that's important. I think it's also important to make sure that, there's tiers to public safety. We have our legal justice system. We also have local law enforcement. We have the sheriff's office, and aside from all things else, we do have a executive director now for PCRB. So with that being said, I definitely think that Charlottesville is we're getting there. And I think that it's really important to make sure that the issue with SWAT is addressed. And I think also as well, in regards to the firing of Chief Brackney, we want to make sure that it wasn't, oftentimes it seems as though, and I would like for us to be able to step out of that, is racism, or race is oftentimes.
So you're not buying the race, you're not buying it's race related?
Absolutely not.
Okay, so no to the race related on the Brackney termination, the Walker resignation, Richardson parting ways, and the Thomas parting ways, not race related at all?
I don't think it's race related with Brackney. I think that, when you look at Charlottesville Police Department or most police departments, they're predominantly male. So with that being said, I think it might have honestly been a thing of sexism. So,
your thoughts on how the Brackney firing was handled?
So a survey was taken, and apparently there was, there was a lot of dissatisfaction within the police department. But honestly, in regards to, aside from SWAT, which, IA is working to handle that, I think that, a survey.
SWAT team was disbanded, is what she's referencing.
Yeah, so I think that with the survey, those are important to see, how do your employees feel? And do they feel as though, you're upholding your job? Are their concerns being addressed? And also as well, that's where you have the, that's where you have the Police Civilian Review Board there, and they've, they conducted the survey alongside another, another tier, and I think that it's really great that it was taken. But honestly speaking, I'm not sure if I think that it should have resulted in a termination. Just simply because, I think it should have been like a 6-month period to be able to properly address that, and then kind of go back and kind of like weigh out performance.
What do you think of the job, the impact, or the influence that Police Civilian Review Board Chairman Bellamy Brown has had on the last 10 days in Charlottesville, Virginia?
I was scrolling through my timeline, and I did notice that Bellamy Brown, I don't know him personally. I haven't had a chance to actually meet with him, but I did notice that he had mentioned that it wasn't a thing of white supremacy. And again, when we start to use racial, connotation or things that could be derogatory, or just, it's not always a thing about race, and I think that we really need to step away from that. because it's just one of those things that's really overwhelming. It could be a mere dislike, or it could be simply maybe you really weren't doing your job, or it could be a number of things. But I think that we should stop saying that things take place just because of the color of someone's skin, their race or ethnicity. So when and Charlottesville has really done a lot with white supremacy over the course of my election so far. So, that and, always kind of like hearing that people are being suppressed. I think that it's honestly different things. And I think that when you have a room full of, strong men and you feel as though something's not being accomplished, and you look and you see that the face of the police department is a woman, honestly, I just think that it could have been a thing of sexism, or, there wasn't really exactly a lot going on. Charlottesville's crime rate's been relatively low. There was some isolated incidents, and I think that ethically policing neighborhoods, especially ones that are predominantly low wealth, is the best way to tackle that. But aside from that, it could have just been maybe I feel like I'm just riding around in my car and, I'm doing a lot of paperwork right now. Or it could have been a number of things. But, I think that we should work moving forward to keep our next chief.
I'll give my take for those that are asking. We got a lot of folks asking for my take on this. I think the Brackney firing, from my standpoint, was tied to rank and file officers no longer feeling inspired or compelled to the call of duty at the level of quality they once felt compelled. And whether it's a sports organization, professional, or college, whether it's a Fortune 100, 200, 300, 400, or 500 company, if the chief executive officer and the police chief is the chief executive officer loses the connection with his or her team members, then the board of directors, which is City Hall, the city manager, city council, they have to consider a different day-to-day leader for the organization. And when rank and file officers go to work and say, we don't feel inspired, we're walking on eggshells, we're uncertain about leadership, we're just going through the motions, that is going to impact the community in much more impactful ways than the termination of a police chief. That's my take. Nicholas Erpy has this comment for you. You mentioned sexism. Does that mean you feel that the firing was primarily sexist motivated, or that Bellamy Brown's review board had the primary impact? What do you feel is the primary cause of the termination? That's from a potential voter.
Yeah, well, I can't, again, I'm just on the outside kind of like analyzing to the, best of my ability. But when you look and you see that a survey's done, and I think that it's great because I think that that's where the supervisory part and being able to actually measure the performance of a chief or just a department altogether can best be analyzed. But I don't think that it should have resulted in a termination. And, when you get you hear race could have been the reason as to why, I would like to think more of sexism and simply the fact that she's a woman.
Marquise Johnson says, hello, Yaz. Marquise Johnson, I believe you're watching in Hampton, Virginia. He asked that you focus some on homelessness. He also says, tell your mom he says hello and that he misses her. Yes, Marquise, I am running for the Board of Supervisors. He asked that question. Do you feel, you grew up here, right? Mm-hmm. Do you feel, as a black woman who grew up in Charlottesville, that you were mistreated, experienced racism or prejudice, or the community did you a disservice because of the color of your skin?
Well, so growing up, I'm 24 again, and growing up, I lived in Fifeville, for most of my, for the first half of my childhood, but I actually attended private school again. So and that was a predominantly white school. So it, I'm not sure. It kind of was neither here nor there to me. It was more about education and being able to, sit in a classroom and receive a quality education, and that was really neat to me. So, yeah.
So you don't think you've experienced racism?
I had about probably about like one time. Other than that, that was pretty much about it.
Can you want to offer any insight to that one time? We don't have to go down that road if you don't want to. I'm just, curious of the one time you experienced it.
Yeah, so it was, I can't exactly remember what grade, but I did in fact get called an N-word, and that was kind of that, so it's one of those things when you actually get called that, you start to, already going to a predominantly white school, I'm different and I don't look like you, so I'm going to be the best student that I can be, the best person that I can be. I'm going to make sure that my uniform is perfect. My handwriting is excellent, and that's kind of where you start to achieve those types of things, and you think more, you think less about friendships, and you think more about grooming yourself as an individual, and being able to, that's kind of about it. And I think that a lot of those things that I learned there are kind of things that I've carried with me. So yeah.
What I want to ask you, 24 years old and running for council, I mean, that is so impressive. I have a lot of respect for your efforts and your willingness to sidestep a lot of the choices I made at 24 to pursue the betterment of our community. Speaks to your maturation and how you're ahead of where most of us were at 24. What separates you from Brian Pinkston and Juan Diego Wade? How do you win a spot on council? Why should you win a spot on council?
Yeah, well, I would like to think of my youth, again, not as something that's going to hold me back. But,
I don't think it's something that will hold you back either.
Yeah.
I think if anything, it should be positioned. So much of winning a race is so much of synonymous with managing a brand. And we're an advertising agency, 100 plus clients active on our roster. We manage their brand positions. And in the ubiquitous era of social media and smartphones, perception often is reality. And if I was on your advisory committee, the strategic advice I would be offering, and I've said similar to Pinkston and Wade, different advice, but offered advice. I would say the youth offers fresh perspective. You haven't been, beaten down by life, demoralized by life. You have a youthful, fresh perspective that perhaps is needed because leadership at this point in Charlottesville is far from youthful. And look where we are now. We're in a soap opera where the police department or city hall or city council on any given day of the week is not just embarrassed and a laughingstock in our community, but across the Commonwealth. I mean, we got papers in Virginia Beach, in Hampton Roads, in Northern Virginia, and the other side of the mountain, covering the dysfunction that is our local government. So if I was offering any kind of counsel, I would say position the youth as a fresh start that is dramatically and desperately needed, because Einstein's definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again and expecting a different result. That's just my take. Your thoughts?
Yeah, so definitely being able to use my youth. I think that Charlottesville is headed in a direction of definitely progression. I see reform being a big one, and honestly, with even looking back at data, Charlottesville's grown in population, and we're now at 50,000 residents. So definitely, despite all things that might have conservatism or conservatists gritting their teeth, without a doubt, Charlottesville is a growing city, and development is definitely something that we need to prioritize. And I think that that's where I can use my youth to kind of kick all of that up and basically challenge conservatism as well. Not necessarily here to dismantle everything and make Charlottesville dysfunctional, but I want to definitely be able to lift the city up. And again, we go back to that build back better, and I think that we can do that. I definitely think that we need to work to stimulate economic activity. I think that we need to make definitely mindful investments in regards to capital projects. What does that look like? Also, as well, making sure that we're, you had read off homelessness, and that's definitely a social issue. It's one that we have already been working towards addressing. The Haven's been open for going on probably 2 decades. I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe about like 15 years. But anywho, I think it's great that we continue to, address the war on poverty. And I think that that can best be done by making sure that we have individuals not only in a shelter, so that they have somewhere to be at for the night or for a season duration, but making sure that we're able to work towards rapidly rehousing these individuals. And I think that that's where continuing to support things like TJAC. There's the motel on 29 North, and I think that that's great to make sure that we have that renovated in a timely fashion so that we're able to reutilize that area for homeless individuals as well. And then, aside from that, just making sure that we're able to address housing, and, being able to think about all of the tiers and every level that takes a part of the full circle or the bigger picture. That you don't want to stay with a centralized focus on a certain group, but making sure that we're continuing to accommodate their needs because we don't want to see the numbers of the homeless community grow. We definitely, the cost of living in Charlottesville has risen. And that's causing a strain in regards to the housing market. You work in real estate.
I do. I own a fair amount. Paul McCarter, we'll get to your comments. Jojo Robertson, we'll get to your comments. Marquise, we will get to your comments. We have the newsroom at the newspaper and 2 television stations currently watching the council candidate, Yaz Washington, on the program. I believe CBS 19 is sending a reporter over to interview you shortly. Johnny Ornalis, Capasa, hello and welcome to the show. Jim Hamlet, hello and welcome to the show. Richmond Times-Dispatch, hello and welcome to the show. We've done interviews on this network, I believe, 5 different times. And I've noticed, I'm a local news junkie. I'm a local politics junkie. I have an insatiable appetite for reading. I enjoy this talk show setting of connecting with people. And I've noticed with our interviews that either strategically or authentically, you have emphasized the need to lead the city in totality, as opposed to championing a demographic of the city. The mayor, Nakia Walker, champions the African American community and is solely focused on this demographic of taxpayers, citizens, and voters. That is a safe statement and accurate statement, folks. Your approach is more totality or holistic, city as a whole. Explain that strategy to me.
Yeah, definitely. I think that Charlottesville, this election is really important. It's definitely going to work to map out the direction of the city. And I think that it's really important that Charlottesville gets strong leadership in addition to the individuals who are already on council. And I think that that would be really great for someone who can look at Charlottesville, again, you said in totality. And I think that that's a really big deal also as well, not only that, but being able to be transparent in decisions.
Have you caught in grief from the African American community about that approach?
Actually, no, I haven't. I don't talk to tailor to any room or individual. I actually,
You're true to yourself.
Yeah, most definitely. And typically, I start with urban development, and sometimes we can't stop things like gentrification from taking place, as it is oftentimes referred to as gentrified development. But we can definitely work to be able to accommodate low-income individuals or our low-wealth neighbors with access to affordable housing, also known as, tax credit options. And I think that it would be really great to continue to do things like that. Piedmont Housing Alliance is currently working on a government-sponsored apartment complex in addition to the ones that they already have. And also as well, when you think about Charlottesville being inclusive, making sure that the land use map comes out in a timely fashion. Again, and that's one of those things. I think it was beautifully written. Actually, Charlottesville was in Times in regards to zoning and how that's related to racism. But I think, honestly, as well, making sure that when we consider what the map looks like, making sure that we have restrictive measures as well with tree conservation ordinances and things of that nature, so that we can kind of just be able to. Sometimes we have to get back to the things that really are relevant, and sometimes, that's where activism is a really great thing, and it's a really great read to be able to see. But making sure that we're able to just provide, there's problems in Charlottesville. I have a solution. I have a solution for quite a bit of things, and I think that I would really love to be able to provide that to the city, and that's my main goal, is to enhance the quality of living. And do it on a full spectrum.
I'm going to give some takes on the political science that I'm seeing here. And look, the council race for Charlottesville. This is the big leagues of Charlottesville politics, right? So because we're in the big leagues of Charlottesville politics, I got to call it, as I see it. When there were 4 candidates running for 2 spots, I thought. And I admire your efforts. I admire your willingness to lead, your courage, the fact that you're 24 and you're doing this. When I was 24, I've said it so many times on the show, I was chasing girls in bars and not doing the things that I was supposed to be doing. Okay? Here, you're freaking running for Charlottesville City Council. It's admirable. When there were 4 people for 2 spots, I thought the pecking order, being straightforward, I thought you were in the 4th slot. With the mayor resigning from this race, I legitimately think that you have a strong chance of getting the 2nd slot. I think Juan Wade is a freaking slam dunk. I'm talking like Michael Jordan from the charity stripe in the slam dunk competition, guaranteed to win the dunk competition. Juan Wade, similar situation for council. If you can inspire, captivate, influence, and sway the Walker base to your campaign and combine them with the base that you've already established, influenced, and inspired, Pinkston's got to be a little nervous right here. That's political science and strategy right there. Pinkston's got to be a little nervous here. We're less than 2 months away. You said 53 days?
Yeah.
We're freaking 53 days away from this thing. This is like, I will say, the most important election in Charlottesville, Virginia history. We have a police chief position that needs to be filled. We have dysfunction and turmoil and morale issues in the department. We have open spots all over City Hall. We have school reconfiguration. We're still in this freaking thing we call COVID. We're still fresh from A12. You watch council on Tuesday night, and the mayor is claiming the city manager was blackmailed by a police officer, and that blackmail got the chief fired by the city manager. I mean, this is like The Young and the Restless minus Victor and Cricket and Jack and all those characters on that soap opera. I mean, this is reality TV at its like craziest. You legitimately could win a spot on council in the most important election in the history of this jurisdiction. Does that pressure or the magnitude of what's happening, has it set in?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely excited. I'm still have that enthusiasm there. Definitely, and being able to, provide solutions for Charlottesville and being able to kick us back up to where we should be at and where we've been working to be at for quite some time. We have postponed projects. We have some things that definitely require project management and procurement management as well, and I think being able to do that, that starts to be like how, we know what we want to do, and that, typically people have a game plan. It's how exactly do you go about accomplishing that, and I think that that's kind of what City Council really deserves in order to be able to have strong leadership, to actually get, not just have these things introduced, but to make sure they're done in a timely fashion where we're not looking at still working to implement things that surfaced about 4 or 5 years ago.
What do you think of what do you think of the job? What do you think of the job and or the leadership skill set of City Manager Chip Boyles?
Yeah, so Chip Boyles.
Because you guys, if you're elected, you would be one of the chair people on the board that determines the city manager's future running this city.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was able to meet with them some weeks ago, and it was a really great conversation. Just kind of talking about, Charlottesville and, the priorities, but also being able to pitch a couple of the, recommendations that I have as I wish to see the city grow. And that was really neat being able to, have that conversation and learn more just about how do we actually go about being able to do that. So, talking about the tax referendum that's kind of in conversation right now with General Assembly, which is one of those things of the how, and being able to properly spend taxpayer dollars. And I love being able to have conversations like that as we work to be able to avoid a tax hike, which was also discussed earlier in the election. Also, aside from that, going home and doing a little bit of research and, the sharing revenue agreement, that's grown by about 2.74%. Projected to be able to contribute to, the budget deficit. We've taken some losses in regards to local tax, and we've seen that with sales and lodging. So being able to, replenish that, I guess I could say being able to replenish that money and compensation is really great.
Who would you, and we'll spend a couple more minutes with you. You're doing a hell of a job. Thank you for joining us on the show. I'm grateful for your time here. If you're elected to council, the 5 councilors, guys, determine who the mayor of Charlottesville is. So there's 2 spots open on the dais. We know Snook is going to stay on the dais. He's halfway through his term, roughly. Michael Payne and Cena McGill halfway through their terms. The two individuals elected in November, along with Councilor Snook, Vice Mayor McGill, and Councilor Payne, they will determine amongst them, the 5, who the mayor of Charlottesville will be in 2022. And it's a 2-year run. If you're elected, who do you think should be mayor of Charlottesville?
Well, honestly, I am trying to be the mayor.
You would like to be the mayor?
I would love to be the mayor. I've done a lot of research, and I have recommendations, and I think that they're realistic. I understand, things that have been done in the past, what hasn't worked, and I know I know the plan that I have to watch the city grow. I would love to be able to make Charlottesville a model city, as I think that we definitely deserve to get back to a place where we're bringing about reform and it's not disorderly, and we have all of our departments that are fully functional, and being able to reinstill a sense of trust, Charlottesville can definitely do that, and I would love to be able to be a part of that change.
Can you imagine? I appreciate your honesty. I appreciate that answer. I love the confidence. I love the confidence that you just said right there. Can you imagine the news cycle? I mean, I'm going to try to paint a picture for everybody, okay? I'm going to paint a picture here. 2 months before the election, the police chief gets fired. Less than 2 months before the election, the incumbent mayor withdraws from the election after raising $0 for her campaign and not even launching her campaign website. The police chief's firing and the mayor's resignation from the race undoubtedly strengthens your base and your campaign to get on council. No question about it. Juan Wade would agree with that. Brian Pinkston would agree with that. There's no question this has strengthened your base and your push for city council. If you happen to get elected to the dais, the impact that would have on the news cycle across the Commonwealth would be tremendous. Take it a step further. If you happen to get elected on the dais and you happen to be named the mayor of Charlottesville as a 24-year-old, that would be national news. That would be undoubtedly national news. I'm talking CNBC, New York Times, USA Today. I'm talking big-time national news. A 24-year-old female following Mayor Nikiah Walker, named mayor, that would be national news. What do you think about this?
Yeah, that's huge. And honestly, originally, I don't like getting my nerves up. So
yeah, you're very consistent. I've noticed that about you. Yeah,
so
you'd be a hell of a poker player.
So definitely, again, it's definitely about Charlottesville. And right now, after seeing the effects of COVID on the city, I definitely would love to be able to step in and be a part of that. Again, we have quite a few things that we need to consider outside of urban development, and it's definitely public safety, environmental management, and also as well equitable education, and that's all a part of key components to make sure that we're building the city back up to a place where it should be at, and the residents deserve that as well. So,
all right. Well, I'm going to close with this. The key for you to get on council and to win a spot on the dais is undoubtedly your efforts and your skill set to inspire Mayor Walker's base, which is now searching for a candidate to vote for. And if you can inspire Mayor Walker's base to vote for you, I'll take it a step further, shotgun vote for you, meaning only vote for you and no one else, you legitimately have a very good shot to win a spot on the dais. So I'm not going to ask you this question, why should folks vote for you? I'm not going to ask you that. You've answered that very well. I am going to ask you this. How do you inspire Mayor Walker's base to shift from Nikiah to Yaz Washington and potentially shotgun vote you onto the dais? Last question.
Yeah, so there's definitely similarities while, being able to pan out and, look at Charlottesville at large. I definitely still would like to be able to provide social justice and making sure that there's racial equity for disadvantaged individuals, particularly Black Americans, and that's definitely a plan that I have, which I've kind of touched on as well, and making sure that through gentrified development that they're not at odds just because there's a new council and there might be a different vision, making sure that this is still a group that receives programs and resources that are much needed to make sure that we're able to lift them up and they don't go unnoticed.
There you go. Yes, Washington, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You got TV crews looking like they're chatting with you later today. You answered straightforward, I would say somewhat difficult questions today. Thank you for the time. Wish you the best of luck. Brian Pinkston and Juan Diego Wade each have spots on the show, should they choose. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to close with this 45 seconds of perspective here. And yes, if you're up against the gun, it's a little past 1:30. You certainly feel free to leave if you want to go to anything you have going on with the day.
Great, thank
sure.
you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Yes. J-Dubs, is that door locked? I don't think that door is locked, is it? No, I don't think it is. I'm going to close with this, guys, and thank you for joining us on today's edition of the I Love CVille Show. This race is completely now up for grabs. It's now completely up for grabs. I've said on this show, I thought Juan Wade was a lock for one of the two spots. The second spot, I've been saying up until yesterday, I thought the second spot was Nakia Walker's to lose. I thought the value of being the incumbent, I thought Nakia Walker, the second spot was hers to lose because of her name recognition and the value proposition of being an incumbent and the first Black female mayor in Charlottesville, Virginia history. With Nakia Walker dropping out of the race is completely up for grabs. If Yaz Washington, the 24-year-old candidate, can inspire that base and encourage that base or influence that base from Walker's camp to her camp, she legitimately she legitimately could win a spot on the dais. Now, I want you to think, if you're a reporter TV, reporter print, reporter radio in Charlottesville and Central Virginia covering the Commonwealth or even the country, think about this story. I want you to think about this news story. If Yaz Washington wins a spot on council, this is how the news story will play out. 24-year-old Black female wins spot on council and named mayor of Charlottesville. That would be the headline. The lead of the story would be 2 months removed from the firing of a police chief that was a Black woman and the resignation of a mayor that was a Black woman. A third Black woman is named, voted into council onto the dais, and named mayor of a Charlottesville community that is still searching for its identity after the Ku Klux Klan bombarded the city, caused the death of Heather Heyer, and rattled the community to its core. This would be a national news story if this woman that was just on the show won a spot on the dais. National news story. Brian Pinkston, who I have a lot of respect for. Brian, I know you watch the shows. I know you listen to the shows. Brian Pinkston, you know I have tremendous respect for you. Juan Diego Wade, you know I have respect for you. Yaz Washington, you know I have respect for you. Anyone who's willing to work for $18,000 a year and get the heat from citizens and taxpayers alike, you gotta respect their courage, their gumption, and their internal fortitude. You don't run for city council for the money. You're working 50, 60 hours a week. Counselors are paid $18K a year, the mayor $20K a year. The position I'm running for in Albemarle County Board of Supervisors is paid like $16,000 and change. You do not do this for the money. You do this because you want to give back to the community. I respect anyone who is willing to give back to the community, takes time away from his or her family, his or her place of employment, to give back to a community he or she loves. I respect that, regardless of politics and ideology. I respect the willingness to give back. When Brian Pinkston found out yesterday, and this is me talking, I have not talked to him about this. I am speculating and spitballing for the sake of a talk show. When Pinkston found out yesterday that Walker withdrew from the election, I can assure you he, A, was immediately shocked, and B, he's a smart, numbers-based man. He immediately started thinking, how will this impact votes and voter bases? And his voter base is not impacted by the Walker resignation. It is not. His voter base is not impacted by the Walker resignation. However, Yaz Washington's is. Yaz Washington's is very much impacted by the Walker resignation. And she just scooped up hundreds, if not thousands, of additional votes. And if she can manage to inspire those additional votes and capture more market share from the Walker base and encourage that base to single shot or shotgun vote Washington, you may be looking at a city councilor, boys and girls. That's political science. This town in this city is like, as the world turns, the young and the restless. Melrose Place and Beverly Hills 90210 all combined. All combined. All combined. What's next? What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next week? What is going to happen in the final September, October, November, and December? Walker's last day on council is December 31st. She has less than 4 months left on the dais, Walker. She literally now has nothing to lose. She said she's not running again. She has nothing to lose. What is going to happen in the next 4 months with Walker on council? What is she going to say? What is she going to do? What's the next lightning rod to crash? Will it be divisive? Will it be bombastic? Will it be antagonistic? Will it be argumentative? You got a personality in Nikia Walker who tells it how she sees it, and she wears her emotions on her sleeves. Everyone would agree with that. Now she doesn't have the filter of, maybe I shouldn't say this because I'm running for re-election. Now she legitimately can go balls to the wall for less than 4 months on Facebook Lives and on the dais. What is next? What dirty laundry will be aired next? If you've happened to be in the crossfire of the mayor in any capacity over the last 3 years and change, buckle up. Because the sniper spotlight is smack dab on your chest. That's the show. I'm Jerry Miller. It's the I Love CVille Show. Take care.